Dr. Elias Voss was working alone in the Primaxis Knowledge Spire, one of the galaxy's greatest archives. This vast database, meticulously updated for thousands of years, contained the history of every known civilization in the galaxy. But Elias had discovered something strange. A civilization had been erased during the age of interstellar exploration. Records were missing. Timelines had been deliberately altered. Even stranger, remnants of humans existed in ancient cultures. Legends, old inscriptions, even terrifying war stories. Was it a mistake? Or had someone intentionally tried to erase humanity? Elias decided to pursue the truth, but as he dug deeper, he realized that a powerful force was working to keep this knowledge hidden. And at that moment, the archive alarm blared. Someone didn't want him to uncover this secret. Dr. Elias Voss didn't hesitate. He rushed to the nearest terminal. If something was being hidden, the only way to find it was to access the restricted archives. He entered his credentials, then used an old holographic bypass code to unlock hidden layers of the archive. But unexpectedly, the system responded with a new security protocol. Access denied. Restricted data category. Omega. Warning. Unauthorized access may result in execution. Elias took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. With trembling fingers, he placed his hand on a small biometric scanner beside the terminal. His fingerprint, retina, and DNA were analyzed. The terminal flickered, then glowed yellow. And suddenly, a distorted, ancient hologram appeared on the screen. A human face. Who is there? The hologram asked, its voice weak and degraded. I have been sealed away for thousands of years. But if you are here, then it's already too late. Elias' heart pounded. Was this a remnant of lost humanity? But the hologram continued. My name is Commander Idris Kane. I am the last guardian of the forgotten. If you are seeing this message, then humanity has been erased from history. But we are not dead. They are searching for us. They believe they have destroyed us. But we are still here. Elias leaned in. We? Who are you talking about? The hologram smirked. Humanity. And at that moment, the terminal's red lights flashed. Attack drones were moving toward the archive. Instead of running, Elias chose to unlock the hologram's full data. If this was real, he could expose the greatest secret in history. If it was a trap, he was already dead. His fingers danced across the holographic interface. The system resisted. Warning, unauthorized access detected, initiating security lockdown. Countdown, 10, 9, 8. Elias gritted his teeth. No, give me full access. A moment of silence. Then, the lock icon shattered on the screen. The hologram flickered again. Idris Kane's face became clearer. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood hundreds, maybe thousands of human figures. And then a voice echoed, They abandoned us. Elias' eyes widened. Who are you? He whispered. The hologram responded, We are the forgotten. We are the exiled. We are those erased from history, the true heirs of humanity. Elias turned to the decrypted files. According to the records, humanity had suffered a cataclysm thousands of years ago, but history books had completely erased those who remained. The forgotten were not dead. They had hidden. And now, Elias had revealed them. Something was very wrong. With shaking hands, Elias noted the coordinates from the files. If this was a trap, he would rather die knowing the truth. But there was a problem. The coordinates didn't exist. He cross-checked the galactic maps. That region was completely empty. Then he found an encrypted message buried in the data. The best place to hide is where no one believes you exist. Elias's eyes widened. The blind zone. The most dangerous, unexplored region of the galaxy. No one who entered had ever returned. Something was there, or someone. But he had no choice. He activated his ship's hyper-jump system. Coordinates set. Destination: the blind zone. Jump commencing. As his ship dove into darkness, Elias glanced back one last time, and in the sky, something was following him. When Elias's ship emerged from hyperspace, he found himself alone in the void. But his system detected something ominous. Incoming transmission. Stop now, or you will never return. Elias's eyes narrowed. The source of the message was unclear. No ships, satellites, or stations were visible. But that didn't mean no one was there. He activated his radio. Elias, I want to speak to whoever brought me here. If no one answers, I'll proceed. A long silence followed. Then, mysterious voice. We weren't expecting someone like you, but we should have. Elias leaned back in his seat. The voice sounded human, but carried an eerie echo. Elias, you weren't expecting me? How do you know who I am? Mysterious voice. Because we've been watching you, Elias, for a very long time. A chill ran down his spine. Elias, tell me who you are. Stop hiding. Silence. Then suddenly something appeared on his ship's radar. A massive structure. Invisible until now, but revealing itself in front of him. As if reality had bent itself to leave something in his path. And on the corroded metal plating of the station, worn-out letters spelled out, Humanity Project, Phase 3. Elias's breath caught in his throat. What did this mean? He guided his ship toward the station's open hangar. The entrance was left exposed. But why? If this place was abandoned, why was there still power? As his ship touched down with a soft landing, Elias quickly checked his weapon and secured his helmet. This place might not be safe. The hatch opened. Dark corridors awaited him. But after a few cautious steps, the lights flickered on. Click, click, click. A massive metal door at the end of the hallway began to slide open, and inside, there were people. But something was wrong with them. Their clothes resembled military uniforms from a century ago. Their eyes had an unnatural glow, and the most unsettling part, they didn't move. They just stared at Elias. Then the radio crackled to life. You have returned. Elias took a step back. Who was speaking to him? A man stepped forward. His face was emotionless, but his eyes carried an unsettling wisdom. Man, at last someone has found us. It has been 100 years. They forgot us. Elias's mind raced with questions. Staying on guard, he scanned the room. These people couldn't be trusted. Finding them was a surprise, but maybe the real answers lay in the station's data core. He spoke cautiously. Elias, if you've truly been here for a century, you must have proof. The man tilted his head slightly. Man, you don't trust us. You are right not to. But the answers you seek are here, in the station's core. Come, let me show you. Elias kept his hands close to his weapon and followed the man. The corridors were covered in dust. The ceiling lights flickered, struggling to stay active. Finally, they arrived at a massive door. The man placed his hand on an old biometric scanner. Beep. The door slowly slid open. Inside was a vast computer system. The screens were ancient but still operational. Elias rushed to the console, brushing dust off the keyboard. His fingers moved quickly as he accessed the systems. File name, Forgotten Project. Last update, 98 years ago. Elias's eyes widened. The file read, all records deleted. Mission canceled. The crew is no longer part of humanity. Elias recoiled in horror. Elias whispering, What? Are you? The man slowly smiled. Man, they forgot us. But we did not forget. The figures behind him stepped forward, silent and eerie. Elias made his decision in an instant. You won't play games with me. His trained reflexes took over. In one swift motion, he drew his pistol and fired 3 rounds into the man's chest. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets hit their mark. But something was wrong. No blood. The man simply tilted his head, and a thin black fluid seeped from the bullet holes. Man, in a hollow voice, "Did you really think we forgot how to feel pain?" The others behind him began moving. Their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light. Alert! All the lights in the station turned red. System announcement. Threat detected. Security protocols engaged. Elias stepped back. He fired again, taking down another figure. But they weren't dying, only slowing down. These people aren't human. He had to escape. He turned back to the data console and frantically initiated a file transfer. Transferring data, 24%. But the creatures were closing in. The man grinned. "Man, you can't run, Elias. You know you belong here." One of them lunged at him. Elias barely dodged, the creature's fist slamming into the console, shattering part of it. The systems were failing, transferring data. 78%. Elias felt the adrenaline surge through his body. He needed a way out. Fast, transferring data. 92%. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape route. Running back to his ship meant losing the data. Fighting seemed pointless. These things didn't die like normal people. Then he saw it. An old maintenance tunnel in the corner of the room. This station was old. If he remembered correctly, there had to be an emergency exit in the lower levels. Transferring data. 95%. But the creatures were too close. One of them lunged. Elias narrowly dodged to the side, preventing the clawed fingers from piercing his face. His back hit the wall, and his eyes locked onto the entrance panel of the service tunnel. The manual override mechanism still worked. Elias quickly reached out, pulled the lever, and the panel opened with a heavy hiss. A completely dark tunnel stretched before him. File transfer, 99%. One of the creatures lunged at him again. Elias stepped back while raising his weapon and fired. Bang! Bang! The bullet struck the creature's head, but it only slowed it down. File transfer complete. System announcement. Transfer complete. Disconnecting. As soon as Elias felt the data disk fall into his hand, he wasted no time and dived into the service tunnel. The muffled screams of the creatures echoed behind him. The dark labyrinth. The tunnel was narrow, suffocating, and completely dark. The air was cold. And something was moving in the side chambers. Elias controlled his breathing and moved forward cautiously. His footsteps echoed. He switched on the light on his belt. At that moment, he noticed the old warning signs on the wall. Warning: Alpha level quarantine. Entry prohibited. The noises from the side chambers intensified. This place was wrong. And now he had 2 major problems. Had the creatures chasing him entered this tunnel? And what else was in here? Elias kept his composure and moved towards an old system panel. If this was an alpha-level quarantine zone, it had to have its own security systems. His fingers quickly skimmed across the panel. The screen was covered in dust, but it followed old Terran engineering standards. That was a stroke of luck. Connecting. Connection failed. Power supply insufficient. Elias gritted his teeth. The main power source was down, but maybe the backup system still worked. Manual bypass initiated. Using an old wire stripping technique, he opened one of the panels and examined the circuits inside. Some were completely fried, but a few were still giving off a weak signal. Elias took a deep breath. He had no choice but to push forward to the other end of the tunnel. He had no idea how long the doors would hold. But if he stayed here, he would eventually die. he quickened his pace. As he advanced toward the end of the tunnel, the wall lights grew dimmer. Connection lost. This part of the facility was disconnected from the main power grid. He scanned his surroundings. Rusted walls, collapsed ceiling fragments. This place hadn't been used in years, but in front of him stood a massive metal door. It was locked. Elias examined the lock panel. It was connected to an old biometric scanner, but it wasn't functioning. "I need to open this manually." He pulled out his multi-tool and pried open the panel. Inside was a mechanical lock system. Slowly, he connected the wires together and completed the circuit. Shh! The door vibrated slightly. Lock disengaged. Elias pushed the door open and stepped inside, and what he saw shocked him. This place? Was it an escape chamber? On the wall was an old logo, Exo Core Project. To the side, old data terminals were covered in dust. But most importantly, at the end of the tunnel, a small escape ship was docked. Elias couldn't believe his eyes. If this ship worked, he could get out of here. The ship's power level was at 4%. He had only one shot at this. Then, an idea struck him. If he could activate the defense systems here, he could trap the creatures in this tunnel. Elias, staying as calm as possible, quickly assembled a temporary power source using the cables. There was no time. If he attempted to activate the defense systems, the creatures might reach him before he finished. But the security doors... He quickly connected to an old power relay. Connection established. He immediately entered commands on the screen. He wasn't sure if he could draw enough power to close the doors, but even a few seconds could buy him time. Close! The ancient mechanical gears of the door began moving. Grrrr! The heavy metal doors shuddered and started closing. But just then, the creatures rounded the corner of the tunnel. Their clawed hands scraped the ground. Their cold, empty eyes locked onto him. Elias jumped back quickly. The doors needed a few more seconds to close. One of the creatures lunged at the door. Boom! The entire frame shook violently. Elias stepped back and raised his weapon. If they broke through, this would become a fight to the death. The final mechanism locked into place. Clank! The doors were fully sealed. Bang, bang, bang! The creatures furiously pounded against the door. But for now, Elias was safe. Then, the system flashed a warning. Warning: low power security doors may not remain closed for long. Elias exhaled sharply. He had bought himself some time, but this wasn't a permanent solution. He had to move. He turned toward the escape ship, and with one last deep breath, he ran toward his only chance at survival. He scanned his surroundings. Rusted walls, collapsed ceiling fragments. This place had been abandoned for years, but in front of him stood a massive metal door. However, it was locked. Elias examined the lock panel. It was connected to an old biometric scanner, but it was no longer functional. "I need to open this manually." He pulled out his multi-tool and pried open the panel. Inside was a mechanical locking system. Carefully, he connected the wires and completed the circuit. Zzzt! The door trembled slightly. Lock unlocked. Elias pushed the door open and stepped inside. But the sight before him shocked him. Was this an escape bay? On the wall, an old logo was visible. Exo Core Project. To the side, dusty old data terminals lined the room. But most importantly, at the end of the tunnel, an escape ship stood. Elias could hardly believe his eyes. If this ship was operational, he could get out of here. The ship's power level was at 4%. He had only one chance. An idea struck him. If he could activate the defense systems here, he could trap the creatures in the tunnel. Elias remained calm as he rigged a temporary power source from the wires. There was no time. If he tried to activate the defense systems, the creatures might reach him before he could finish. But the security doors... Quickly, he connected to an old power relay. Connection established. He immediately entered the commands on the screen. He wasn't sure if he could draw enough power to fully shut the doors, but even a few seconds of delay would buy him time. Close. The ancient mechanical gears of the door roared into action. Grrr. The heavy metal doors trembled as they started closing. But just at that moment, the creatures rounded the tunnel's corner. Their steel claws scraped against the floor. Their eyes were cold and hollow. Elias leaped back quickly. The doors needed a few more seconds to close. One of the creatures lunged at the door. Boom! The door nearly buckled under the impact. Elias stepped back, raising his gun. If the creatures broke through, this would turn into a life-or-death struggle. The final mechanism clicked into place. Clank! The doors fully shut. Bang, bang, bang! The creatures pounded against the metal wildly. But for now, Elias was safe. However, a system warning flashed. Warning, low power, security doors may not hold for long. Elias took a sharp breath. At least he had bought himself some time, but this was far from a permanent solution. There was only one choice. Keep moving forward. The doors wouldn't hold forever, and if he stayed, he'd eventually die. He quickened his steps. As he moved further down the tunnel, the lights along the walls grew dimmer and dimmer. Connection lost. This area was completely disconnected from the facility's main power source. He scanned the area. Rusted walls, collapsed ceiling fragments. This place had been abandoned for years. But in front of him stood a massive metal door. However, it was locked. Elias examined the lock panel. It was connected to an old biometric scanner, but it was no longer functional. I need to open this manually. He pulled out his multi-tool and pried open the panel. Inside was a mechanical locking system. Carefully, he connected the wires and completed the circuit. Zzzt! The door trembled slightly. Lock unlocked. Elias pushed the door open and stepped inside, but the sight before him shocked him. Was this an escape bay? On the wall, an old logo was visible. Exo Core Project. To the side, dusty old data terminals lined the room. But most importantly, at the end of the tunnel, an escape ship stood. Elias could hardly believe his eyes. If this ship was operational, he could get out of here. The ship's power level was at 4%. He had only one chance. Elias examined the escape ship's control panel. The power level was critically low. If he attempted to escape immediately, he might either run out of power mid-flight or fail to break orbit. I need to fix the power system. He opened the maintenance panel on the side of the ship. Inside, the cables were old, some even severed. The power cells were nearly depleted. There must be a generator here. Elias scanned the room and spotted a large power unit against the wall. The terminal was still operational. The old user interface flickered to life. No password required. No one had used this system in years. Options: emergency power transfer, manual calibration, reactor restart. Elias tried the first option. Error: insufficient power for transfer. Then I have to restart the reactor. He skipped to the third option and selected reactor restart. Warning: system damaged. An unexpected reaction occurred. All the lights went out, then flickered back on. Power level: 4% to 25%. Elias exhaled deeply. This was enough to get the escape ship running. He climbed into the cockpit, settled into the seat, and activated the systems. The engines roared to life. Destination: unknown. The massive doors above the tunnel began to open. The escape ship lifted off, accelerating out of the tunnel. Outside, the vast, dark ocean of stars stretched before him. Elias glanced back one last time. He had no idea what he was leaving behind. But he had survived. And this was a new beginning.